Probably the most famous occurred in Farmington, New Mexico. And that was an astonishing event. I think this was 1957, thereabout. And on the morning, gosh, I've forgotten the exact day. I'll have to pull that up in just a second here. But people were running out into the streets. I mean, businesses stopped, cars stopped on the street, people were running out of their homes because there was not 100, but like 200, 300 of these craft darting around. Some very high up, some quite low, saucer-shaped, metallic, doing all kinds of incredible maneuvers, coming at each other and pulling apart, circling around, turning at right angles. And it went on for a good 2 hours. Farmington is just a little town in New Mexico of about 3,000 people in the city center, but close to 6,000 people in the outlying areas. And they estimate that at least half of the people there saw it. I'm thinking probably more because most people don't want to talk about it, but you could not ignore this. There were so many people who saw this that it was absolutely undeniable. But yeah.
What do you think the purpose of these swarms? Because some people are saying this is their way of just kind of showing their power, or kind of displaying like what they can do if they want, or is it just more random than that?
No, well, the word you said it. The key word I think is display, because that's we don't know for sure. Obviously, we can only speculate unless we talk to them. But I think it's very clear that they wanted to be seen, and coming down in those large numbers like that, it's undeniable that this was some sort of display. And just based on my years of research, it's pretty clear to me that there is an agenda to let the world know, let all humanity know that we are not alone, that we are being visited. And I think they're conducting what amounts to a publicity campaign. And cases like these are a really good example of that, because it's so undeniable. They had to know that people would be out there and seeing this. So yeah, I think ultimately that's probably what it was. There's some speculation that this was, this occurred on St. Patrick's Day, if I remember correctly. And what I find so interesting about this particular case is, according to some sources, this is on the anniversary of the Aztec UFO crash, which was not far away. And some people say the crash occurred on the same day, and that this was just sort of a commemoration or a reminder of that. That's, again, pure speculation, but I found it intriguing because there's really no other case quite like what happened in Farmington on that day. I mean, it was absolutely the biggest UFO event of its kind anywhere ever.
Did anyone manage to get a picture of it at that point?
Actually, yeah, they sure did. And I'm so glad, because people always say, well, how come there's no photographs? And there is. It's a pretty famous photograph. It's quite old. I'm not sure it would convince a skeptic. This was back in 1950, actually March 17, 1950. But I've seen the photograph. You can look it up online. I didn't include it in the book. I don't have the rights to it, but it's not hard to find. If you just type in, Farmington UFOs, it shows multiple of disc-shaped objects, which are quite dark, and doesn't really have any reference points in terms of seeing buildings and the landscape around it. But it's interesting nevertheless. And when you combine that or add it to all the eyewitness testimonies, I think it's undeniable. It's funny because the Air Force really tried hard to debunk this. They said they were not aware of it. They're not investigating it. Ultimately, there was so much pressure, I guess, from people of the town, they had to comment on it. And all the comments were negative. We know nothing about it. There's nothing to it. Finally, they put out a sort of debunking explanation that this might have been a skyhook weather balloon, which had shattered into a million little pieces, and these fragments fell down, which is definitely debunking absurd explanation. Because if that were true, the town would have been covered in these fragments, and there wasn't one, not one example of that. And all the witnesses, pretty much all of them, said no, these were saucer-shaped craft. They moved in a controlled manner. I mean, there was one very large craft which was apparently releasing smaller ones. And there was a metallic sheen to them. Some were coming quite low. And it wasn't just one display. This actually took place 2 times on that same day. Just, I guess, to make sure that people were aware of it. But yeah,
Is this the picture? Would that
yeah,
would that
yeah,
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
it.
so I can see, yeah, 1950, that would be about as good as you could get. Definitely shows multiple different objects varying in size.
Yeah,
And
you
it
can
looks
see.
like it was news. It looks like it was front page news at the time too, from what I'm
Oh, it
reading.
sure was. National news. I'm not sure if it went international, but it was a huge story, and a lot of people got really angry at how our military, our Air Force, our governments were handling this. Uh, Back then, the cover-up had been firmly clamped down due to cases like Roswell. So they knew at this point for sure that this was a real phenomenon, but they were doing everything they could, every technique they had to discount it. I mean, they went to the town and actually threatened some witnesses, told them not to talk about it, that you didn't see anything. I talked to a gentleman who's actually writing a full-length book about it. He contacted me hoping to get some new information. I sent him all the newspaper articles I had on this case and the information I could find, because it's a landmark case for sure.